from customers. Okay. What are the changes? Well, obviously, you know, a new card comes in an email, comes in mail, and the customers need to know why they received a new card. The card will now look different because obviously there's going to be, you know, an actual chip on it, and you know, it would be good to clearly, you know, communicate why those changes are there, and you know, outline them and potentially, you know, highlight and point cardholders' attention to them. Obviously, the transaction experience itself will change. So now we're no longer swiping our cards; we're inserting them into the terminal. There will be a potential change whereby you used to sign as a cardholder verification method, and now you'll be asked to enter a PIN, or vice versa. There may be a new card number, you know, which will, you know, require you to think about the recurring transactions, but that's really nothing new, you know, or EMV specific, but certainly something to keep in mind. And while we don't want to scare anyone off, but you know, we should be honest with our cardholders about the state of the industry and the fact that, you know, the POS, you know, the point of sale device, you know, upgrade ratio is still not where we want it to be. So there will be situations where your card will still have to be used, you know, as a MEC stripe, and there may be some confusion among the merchants or retailers. So it's good for the cardholder to at least have that expectation or be aware that, you know, certain things might happen. But then again, you know, it's certainly something that you want to consider as part of your own messaging. Just to focus a little bit more on the transaction experience, well, again, you are now inserting your card and but not swiping it. But then again, if the terminal is not yet EMV ready, then you will be asked to swipe it. And you know, your new chip card, your new EMV card, will still have the old-fashioned MEC stripe on the back of it, so that you could perform that transaction. So you know, your customers at least need to be prepared for that. The card has to stay in a terminal if it is an EMV transaction for the duration of that transaction. That's something that you know, customers need to understand, but they also need to remember to actually take the card out of the terminal when they're done with the transaction, because it's not something that they do today. So it certainly, you know, is a significant change to their experience. PIN versus signature.
You know, Vadim, when you do insert it, you don't have to hold on to it. I think that's the part that's going to be different. You know, where that's
a very good point, right? You insert it and then you start potentially interacting with the screen, you know, and entering your PIN or doing something, or, you know, confirming the amount. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's another thing to consider.
So with the swipe, it's like you never let go of that card, but with this, it's like it is a different experience.
You actually let go.
You could really leave your card. I could see that happening.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially if your attention moves from, you know, inserting the card to interfacing with the screen on the terminal, then you could potentially be forgetting about the card and walking away after the transaction and leaving it behind.
Yeah, and you're interacting with the cashier, and then you're getting your bags, and yeah,
exactly,
that's something to think about.
Naturally, PIN versus signature, and again, you know, I don't want to beat that to death, but you have to remember that even if you choose a signature preferring EMV profile, which is, again, just a set of rules, so your rules will say we want a signature-based transaction. Well, for a debit card, the thing to remember is that because of the Durbin Amendment requirement, your debit card will support at least two routing options, one through a payment network, so let's say Visa or MasterCard, and the other through a regional PIN network. Now, the signature preferring part of your logic, or of the EMV profile logic, only applies to the payment network. So unless you you know, are always expecting the customers to go through a Visa or a MasterCard route, which is not something that we can control, you have to remind the cardholders that at, you know, under certain circumstances they will be asked to enter a PIN rather than a signature, because if the merchant or the customer choose to select a debit or original PIN network routing of their transaction, that will always prompt them for a PIN. So something to keep in mind, because when it comes to the behavior of the terminal, well, it's something that is outside of your control, and you're at the mercy of the merchant and the retailer, however they decided to program their terminals, and of course the cardholder. So if they get more than one choice, just like they do today, credit versus debit option on the screen, well, they might choose the debit option, and that will prompt them for a PIN, even though you would have ordinarily preferred and insisted on the signature. Again, not all terminals are going to be ready, so cardholders need to be prepared to perform an EMV transaction in one store and potentially an old-style swiping transaction in another. And there will be various problems that they need to be on the lookout for, or at least be prepared, and we'll talk about the problems separately. So here they are. Some transactions may get denied or lost due to a plethora of potential issues, but mostly connectivity issues or transaction timeouts, for example, where the communication with the host is interrupted, and because in the EMV world now the connection is needed there to receive the authorization back, we might potentially be looking at some issues around that. Inconsistent terminal behavior. Again, we talked about this already, but it's PIN versus signature. It's the programming of the terminal really will differ by the from one brand to another, and I'm talking about the manufacturer of the terminal, and then on top of that, whatever software, whatever logic the retailer introduces into that point of terminal will affect the overall feel and the experience of the transaction. Confusion is another one, which again Amy's example illustrates perfectly, where a clerk behind the at the shop doesn't understand or doesn't know what the new EMV enabled terminal is capable of doing, and it's something that could certainly lead to various difficult scenarios. Merchant lack of training is exactly that. And of course, we just talked about cards left behind. Well, again, in a contact transaction, in the transaction where you insert the card into the terminal, it's very important now, because it's not something that you ever had to worry about before, to remember to pull that card out and put it back in your wallet. So we talked about who you would communicate to, and I think it's self-explanatory why you're talking to the cardholders. It's also fairly obvious why you're talking to staff, because your staff will be your front line when it comes to fielding questions from the cardholders. And we're talking about the staff in your branches as well as the staff at your call center. We're talking about them being prepared for various questions, but it's also it's not limited to just answering general questions about EMV or a chip card or what are the changes or benefits. It's also about troubleshooting some of these issues that we talked about just a moment ago, whereby you effectively turn your call center into a help desk, or almost like a technical help desk, helping the cardholders try different things and work through some of the more common scenarios that they're going to run into out in the field. And as Amy and I both talked about earlier, it is, if possible, very important for you to start reaching out to the merchants. And certainly if you have if you know the merchants in your local domain, it would be very helpful if you communicated to them to help them understand that, of course, the liability shift is coming, and it affects them directly, and it is to really to their own benefit and of interest to start thinking about upgrading their terminals and training their staff and making sure that they're clear on what that upgrade actually means to them. Because, of course, there are certain considerations that merchants will have to go through as far as upgrading to EMV. And sometimes they will be in line with your strategy, sometimes not. So the sooner you reach out to them and present yourself as a partner, or at least as a source of information, the more chances you have to align your interests with those of the merchants. When we talk about all these different, communication streams, let's just consider the different topics. Why are we changing? What are the different security benefits of moving to EMV? Global acceptance, visible and functional changes. Your card will have a chip and a magnetic stripe. Obviously, you want to communicate or provide an illustration of how a transaction will work or how the card reader works. As part of the security benefits or why changing, you want to just remind everyone that the magnetic stripes, are really becoming antiquated, and they are the primary reason for all of the data breaches and the security concerns that underscore the migration to EMV. And of course, the EMV is the technology around which all of the new modern payment solutions are being based. And of course, what to expect. So these 9 topics is a real, simplification of the variety of different messages that you can, construct around them. But that was my attempt to kind of summarize the different things you might be talking about. When it comes to the timing of your communication, well, you should be communicating to your customers now because you want them to know about what's happening and what's coming. You certainly want to be communicating to your customers when you issue them a new card, and there will have to be some sort of a consistent, ongoing communication messaging after the card is already in the hands of the cardholder. These are some of the things, just again, to that you can talk to your customers before the card is issued. What to expect. How's the card going to change? How are you going to use it? And of course, as always, offer more options. In terms of getting new additional information or learning more about EMV or the card benefits that are going to be expected. When you do issue the card, well, obviously you want to talk to them about how to activate it or how to use it, but you certainly want to remind them of the security benefits of the card, just so that they are clear on the advantages. And as I mentioned, regardless of whether you focus on the signature versus PIN, you do want to provide the instructions on PIN change or PIN management, and again, the use of the PIN during the transaction. After the cards have been issued, and it's really something that you will decide as part of your migration plan, whether you'll do a mass reissue or you will follow your natural reissue cycle, or you'll do like a collapsed reissue. You certainly want to make certain informational resources available to your cardholders, and those include the frequently asked questions, and through any communication channel, you want to offer additional information that might be available on your website. Obviously, an easy way for your cardholders to reach you in case they run into any problems, and again, PIN management or instructions of on what to do if you want to change your PIN or if you forgot your PIN, and so on and so forth. How are you going to communicate? Well, most of you probably know this much better than I do, but let's quickly run through this through the different channels that you might be able to use, the consistency of your message, and the simplicity of your message. These are the different things I could think of. I mean, obviously, this isn't rocket science, but you want to communicate through your branches, through the ATMs, the call centers, the statements. Your website or the FAQs or the online banking site is a great resource. Just email campaigns, social media. If you are have your customers following you on Facebook or Twitter, direct mail, and advertisement. So just all of these channels can be utilized, to facilitate effective communication to your customers regarding the upcoming EMV migration. One thing, of course, to keep in mind, and probably this is kind of the overarching priority here, is to make sure that your message is consistent throughout all of the channels that you're utilizing, and that you're keeping your message simple. The first thing, and I'm going to be the first one to point out that I broke that rule throughout this presentation. Do not use EMV as as part of your terminology, simply because we as industry insiders have been talking about EMV for years now, and this is part of our DNA right now. But when it comes to your average cardholder, they don't have a clue what EMV stands for or what it means, and it might just scare them off, right? So the terminology that you want to use is a chip card or a chip-enabled terminal. You absolutely want to ensure that throughout all of the customer touch points, this terminology is consistent. But it's not just the terminology, it's also the graphics. You want to make sure that when you use the images or the graphics to illustrate how a card is going to look or how it's going to work with the terminal, you have a consistency throughout that as well, in terms of how the chip itself will look on the card or how the card is inserted into the terminal, because obviously there might be different types of terminals out there where the card goes in from the bottom or from the side or from the top, and you potentially want to just account for at least all, if not for all of these scenarios, but at least stick with one and be consistent. This is a quick study that MasterCard conducted a couple of years ago, and as you can see, the customers, like while we mentioned all those different channels that you can use for your communication, what the customers are really looking for is a welcome kit, right? And a welcome kit in our case is that envelope that comes, when you're receiving your brand new chip card. So that's what the customers are looking for, and this is where we want to focus our attention on. So here's an example of an insert that we at Shoreline have actually put together and we offer to our customers that can be included into the envelope when we ship out the cards that are being issued to your cardholders. It's a very straightforward and a very simple message here that quickly, literally at a glance reminds you about the benefits, gives you a quick introduction of what EMV stands for, and then it gives you that simple to follow infographic on how the transaction experience might actually change. So,
and I want to interject here, Vadim, from a marketing standpoint, that we can customize this with your logo, of course, and with your colors. So it can be generic, where we just take out that Shoreline Gemalto logo, we put your logo, or we can also change all the colors to match your brand. So it's something that we can customize.
Perfect.
And we can create custom ones too for you, as well as we have a more detailed one that goes into kind of the nitty-gritty and the Q&A. So there's a lot more that you can do, but this is the basic buck slip.
Yep. Just to give a fair share to other examples, these are some of the slips or inserts that we have received for our actual personal cards. So here are examples from Chase and Citibank that, again, quickly talk about the benefits and the, I guess, the changes associated with the new card. And you can see how different these cards look, and you can see that there are even different types of chips out there. So Chase seems to have that bigger square look, while the Citibank has a more common smaller rectangular shape of the chip. And again, that's just a matter of customizing your message and making sure that it's consistent with what the cardholder is actually going to find in the envelope. Here's another example that's actually offered by MasterCard, and this is their suggestion for a card carrier. So you can see that there's a little space for the card on the left-hand side. And then there, you can see that they actually included the frequently asked questions as well as the infographics on both sides of the page. So again, we'll talk about the resources that are really available to you right now, and certainly your payment brands and payment networks offer a plethora of various collateral and resources that you could take advantage of. So this is one of the examples as well.
And again, from a Shoreline perspective, we offer generic carriers, and we also offer custom carriers, and we can work with you to customize your carrier to include EMV information. So that's something you can work with your account administrator.
Here are some just additional examples of what different issuers include on their card carriers. So these are actual samples of card carriers that are being used today. When we talk about other channels, so when we, obviously again, the welcome pack is what your cardholders are expecting, which is, this is what they're finding most useful. But that's not to say that that's where you focus all your attention and you forget about every other channel. So just a few more notes about the different channels that you can use and how you can use them. Well, throughout your branches and throughout your ATMs, you can have the ATMs pop up, on-screen messaging about the chip cards coming or the benefits and potentially the instructions on how to use them if your ATMs are being upgraded to handle EMV transactions as well. Within your branches, you can have all sorts of signage and posters talking about EMV, and what I have at the bottom is actually one of the examples that one of our EMV partners is offering to their clients, which is effectively just a little poster that you can have sitting next to a teller, that again reminds and informs a cardholder about about the EMV coming and what it actually would mean for them. But of course, when it comes to the use of the branches and really leveraging the connection that you have with your local community is potentially I'm thinking about you inviting your cardholders to an information session held at a branch where you can actually get your customers in and have like an in-person presentation about EMV, about what the card is going to look like, why things are changing. But of course, anytime you have an opportunity for a face-to-face interaction, that kind of builds that trust and gives the cardholders that sense of comfort that their institution is taking care of them. Your website, and of course that kind of extends into the online banking application as well, is the resource to maintain the general information and the frequently asked questions and all sorts of illustrations and of course video tutorials. I find them very useful, and you'll see in the subsequent slides that that's what many of the issuers and networks are focusing on. I mean, the production costs are cheap these days, right? And it doesn't have to be a very sophisticated or fancy video production, but as long as you actually have a video up on your screen and you can have, you can have it hosted on YouTube for just to kind of simplify things. But seeing an actual transaction and seeing an experience goes a very long way. As an alternative to reading through, a lengthy conversation, set of frequently asked questions or just general information, and trying to decipher some of the terminology that's being used. So, when we think about the use of your website, well, here are some of the examples. And again, as you can appreciate, it's the larger financial institutions in the U.S. that have been focusing on EMV quite early on, so that's why most of the examples today come from the likes of the Chases and Banks of America and Citibanks. But again, you don't really need to have a huge marketing department or a large budget to put something like this together. It's a matter of having the dedicated section on your website that talks about EMV and providing all the right resources that will be most helpful to your customers. So here, just a couple of examples. As you can see immediately, you've got 2 video clips on the website, where a transaction is shown. You can see different types or different ways the terminals might look or the card might be inserted. And of course, you can see Bank of America actually puts both the video clip and the infographics side by side to make sure that customers can actually correspond between the two.
And Vadim, I think it's a good idea from a bank and credit union perspective maybe to get a marketing person or a web person to kind of research what the big banks are doing, just to check out their websites and see how they're approaching it.
Absolutely. I mean,
it's a good research tool right now to start researching it to build out your site.
No question about this, and I have to admit that that's exactly what I did, at least in part, in preparation for this presentation. Because again, while we don't necessarily want to be copycats, but certainly following the good example and the lead of the large institutions who have already, for the most part, completed or are in the full kind of scale EMV migration mode already, you want to rely on their experience and trust that what they're using in terms of their cardholder resources is what they found most useful. Here we have just a few more examples of the different infographics, and again, just examples and reminders that the cardholder experience or the transaction experience changes not only at the point of sale terminal at a store or a retail location, but also when you work with the bank ATM, and the fact that the ATM will actually now take your card and the card will stay there, as you perform your transaction. What Amy just mentioned about checking out the other websites and kind of looking at what others have done. Well, certainly looking at their FAQs is another very good idea, just to kind of get an understanding of the different topics and the different and a range of different questions that they're covering. And again, this is something that all of the institutions who are starting to think about their EMV migrations should be thinking about. And again, it's not a matter of being a large national bank with a huge marketing budget, because small credit unions and community banks could put something like that fairly quickly together. The State Employees Credit Union example on the left is a prime example of that. Real quick, because obviously we could talk about this for much longer, but just a few highlights in regards to the other channels. Well, certainly you leverage your call center and the IVR system for all sorts of PIN management options, as well as the access to general information. When it comes to advertising, while you don't necessarily have to advertise EMV migration as such or per se, you certainly want to start utilizing chip card images and chip transaction examples as part of your advertising, if that's what you're considering. As far as online banking is concerned, it's great to, at the same time as you're issuing and sending a new card to a cardholder, to have like an email alert that communicates and informs the cardholder of the new card on its way. And just in general, because there's lots of information to communicate to the cardholders, and the industry landscape will continue to shift as for example, terminal adoption grows. You certainly want to utilize EMV broadcasts to kind of keep your cardholders informed, and again, effectively continue that educational process. As far as the resources are concerned, well, you have plenty to choose from. As I mentioned, the networks are there, your vendors are there, and there are several different organizations or alliances that have that are specific, that contain like EMV specific resources and information. One of them is the EMV Migration Forum. Visa has plenty of resources on their website. In fact, they actually produce